Good morning, everybody. This week, Mrs. Robinson and I will be talking to you about road safety. She'll be talking to you tomorrow, but today I'm going to read you a story which I hope will make us all think about road safety. And afterwards, I've put some links for you to see some road safety adverts. And today we'll be thinking quite a lot about hedgehogs because I'm going to read you this book about a hedgehog. Though in fact, it's called The Hodgeheg. And I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm not going to read it all, so you'll find, if you want to read it yourself, you find there's a lot more to the story than this. I'm just going to read you the beginning, a little bit of the middle, and the end. Okay, here it is. This one's called Max. You'll meet him in a moment. Your Auntie Betty has copped it, said Pa Hedgehog to Ma. Oh no, said Ma. Where? Just down the road, opposite the newsagents. It's a bad place to cross, that is. Oh, everywhere's a bad place to cross nowadays, said Ma. The traffic's dreadful. Do you realise, Pa, that's the third this year? And they're all on my side of the family too. There was grandfather, and then my second cousin once removed, and now poor old Aunt Betty. I'll show you the pictures. They were sitting in a flower bed in their home, the garden of number 5A of a row of semi-detached houses in a suburban street. On the other side of the road was a park. Now, the park was very popular with local hedgehogs on account of the good hunting it offered, as well as worms and slugs and snails, which they could find in their own garden. There were special attractions at the park. Mice lived under the bandstand, feasting on the crumbs dropped by listeners' sandwiches. Frogs dwelt in the lily pond, and in the ornamental gardens, grass snakes slithered through the shrubbery. All these creatures were regarded as great delicacies by hedgehogs, and they could never resist the occasional night sport to the park. But to reach it, the hedgehogs had to cross a busy road. Poor old Aunt Betty, said Ma again. It's a hard life, and that's flat. It's a hard death, said Pa, and that's flat too. Oh, talk about squash, the old Shh, said Ma, at the sound of the approaching footsteps. Not in front of the children, and as up trotted 4 small figures, exact miniatures of their parents, except that their spines were still greyish rather than brown. 3 of them were little sows, named by Ma, who was very fond of flowers. They were Peony, Pansy, and Petunia. Pa had agreed reluctantly to these names, but had insisted upon his own choice for the 4th, a little boar. Boys, he said, needed noble-sounding names, and the 4th youngster was therefore called Victor Maximilian St. George, Max for short. What are you talking about, Ma? He said. Nothing, said Ma hastily. You wouldn't be talking about nothing, said Max, or there wouldn't be any point in talking. Don't be cheeky, said Pa, and mind your own business. Well, I suppose it is their business really, Pa, isn't it, said Ma, or soon will be. They're bound to go out exploring outside our garden before long, and we really must warn them. You're right, said Pa. Now then, you kids just listen to me. And he proceeded to give his children a long lecture about the problems of safety for hedgehogs. Max listened carefully, and then he said, do humans cross the road? Oh, I suppose so, said Pa. But they don't get killed. I don't think so, said Pa. Never seen one lying in the road, which I would have if they did. Well then, said Max, how do they get across safely? You tell me, son, he said, you tell me. I will, said Max. Now, Max began his research the very next day. He slipped out of the garden at dusk and ambled along the path by the side wall of number 5A. He crept under the front gate and immediately found himself in a sea of noise. It was the evening rush hour, and the home-going traffic was just at its heaviest. Cars and motorbikes, buses and lorries thundered past, terrifyingly close, it seemed to him, as he crouched outside the gate, and he was dazzled by all of the lights. Gradually, he grew a little more accustomed to the din and the glare, and though he dared not move, began to observe the humans, for numbers of pedestrians passed close by, and they were all walking on the narrow road in which he sat, a road raised above the level of the street itself by about the height of a hedgehog. They're safe, said Max to himself, because the noisy monsters aren't allowed up here. He looked across the street and could see that at the far side of it there were other humans, also walking safely on a similarly raised road. He did not, however, happen to see any cross the street. But they must cross somewhere, said Max. There must be a place further along the street. He moved very slowly, keeping close to the outer walls of the front gardens, where there was still some shadow, and froze stock still every time a human passed. Nobody even noticed him. Soon the houses gave way to a short row of shops. One of them was the newsagent's, opposite which his great Aunt Betty had breathed her last, and here his progress became more difficult. The shops were still open, and Max had to choose his moment to make a dash across each brightly lit entrance. Phew, this is tiring. Perhaps I should go back home, he said. But then, suddenly, not very far ahead, he saw what he was seeking. There were humans crossing the road, sometimes singly, sometimes in twos and threes, sometimes in quite large groups. They stepped down from the narrow raised road and walked straight across the road with hardly a look to the left or the right, and stepped back up again on the far side, and off they went. And every time that anyone wanted to cross, well, all of the traffic stopped and waited respectfully until the way was clear again. This then was the perfect place. Here, humans could cross in perfect safety. Well, if humans can, why not hedgehogs? Reasoned Max. But how do people know the exact spot? How do the cars and lorries know when to stop, he wondered. Cautiously, he shuffled nearer, keeping close to the wall until he found himself beside a tall, checkered pole, on top of which was a glowing orange globe. Across the street, he could see, was a similar pole, and between these two poles the humans walked while the traffic waited. Biding his time till a moment when there was nobody else about, Max crept forward to the edge of the raised road and peered down at the surface of the street. It was striped, black and white, all the way from one side of the road to the other. That, he realised, was the secret. By now it was quite late. The rush hour was over. The shops were shut. All was quiet. I'll wait, thought Max, and then when a car or a lorry comes along, I'll cross in front of it. Soon he saw something coming. It was a lorry. He was halfway across when he suddenly realised that the lorry hadn't slowed up at all, and by now was almost on top of him, blinding him with its brilliant lights, deafening him with his thunderous roar. It was not going to stop. Lorries, he realised, only stop for people. They didn't stop for hedgehogs. I'm going to jump ahead a bit now. So Max realises that while zebra crossings are really good for people to cross, zebra crossings don't wait for hedgehogs. So he keeps on looking in our story to find a better way for the hedgehog family to cross the road safely. There he is. Max kept going, a good deal more slowly this time, and then suddenly, once again, he saw not far ahead what he was seeking. Again, he saw people crossing the road safely. This time they did not go in ones and twos at random, but waited all together and then, at some signal he supposed, crossed at the same time. Wonder if he worked out what they're doing. Max drew nearer until he could hear at intervals a high, rapid peep, peep, peeping noise, at the sound of which the traffic stopped and the people walked over in safety. Creeping closer still, tight up against the wall, he finally reached the crossing place and now could see this new magic method. The bunch of humans stood and watched, just above their head, a picture of a little red man standing quite still. The people all stood quite still. Then suddenly the little red man disappeared, and underneath him there was a picture of a little green man walking, swinging his arms. And so the people walked, swinging their arms, while the high, rapid peep, peep, peeping noise warned the traffic that it should not move. Max sat and watched for quite a long time, fascinated by the red man and the green man. He rather wished there could have been a red hedgehog and a green hedgehog, but that was not really important. As long as hedgehogs could cross safely here, that was all he had to prove, and the sooner he could do it, the better. Okay, well, it takes Max a while to realise that actually that's not a great place for hedgehogs to cross either. So Max carries on, determined he'll find a way to the park, and looks for some more safe places to cross. There he is, having a nice bit of dog food, I think, in that one. Now, if there was only a human, he thought, that could stop the traffic and make absolutely sure it didn't move till you were safely over, he said to his uncle. Well, there are in fact humans like that, said Uncle B. I saw one the other day. I saw one once, when I was out during the day. It's not something I do often. He was a big man dressed in blue with a tall domed hat on his head, and he just held up his hand and everything stopped while some small humans crossed the street. Once they were safely on the other side, he waved the traffic on again. Max pondered this. So, he said, there might be lots and lots of small humans who have to cross the street in the day. And Uncle B nodded. Well, poor old Max, he doesn't have a very easy task. And the policeman doesn't work out very well for him either. But right at the end of the book, we're on the last chapter now, Max finally does find a way to solve the problem for his family. And this is what he does. Very early the following morning, 7 spindly shapes emerged from under the front gates of number 5A and B, and they set off up the road, passing garden after garden, from many of which a hedgehog had set out on a journey to the park from which he would never return. If only they could succeed today, henceforth the street would be forever safe for all of hedgehog kind. They passed the factory and the automatic crossing with his little red and green men, and they came at last to the spot where Max had seen, I wonder if you've guessed what he's found out, he'd seen a great female with a magic wand. Opposite them on the street, the school clock showed 6, and the hedgehogs concealed themselves in a doorway and settled in to wait. By 8:15, the lollipop lady had arrived. Even the earliest children never appeared before past, but she always liked to be in good time. She stood stamping her large feet, for it was a crisp morning. She smoothed down her long white coat. She settled her black cap firmly, and then, grasping her staff of office, its circular disc bearing the words, "Caution, children crossing," she stood at attention at the curbside, ready for the first comers, while the early rush hour traffic roared past. Now never, for the rest of her life, did the lollipop lady forget the sight that now met her eyes. Coming along the pavement towards her were 7 hedgehogs in single file. "Surely," she said, "you're not going to school." And said the lollipop lady when they reached her. The noise that she made meant nothing to Max, but he advanced to the edge of the curb, his nose pointing eagerly across the street, and the others all lined up beside him. "We wish to go to the park," he said. "Kindly stop the traffic." The noise that he made meant nothing to the lollipop lady, but its intentions were as clear as day. Raising her magic wand on high, the great female strode into the middle of the street, and at the sight of her, the traffic meekly halted. Then, before the astonished eyes of those fortunate enough to witness this historic occasion, there walked across the street a slow, solemn, dignified procession of hedgehogs. At the rear was Uncle B, shepherding before him Peony, Pansy, and Petunia. In front of them was Ma, and in front of her was Pa. But at the head of the file there marched the pioneer of road safety, Victor Maximilian St. George, a name to be remembered forever by hedgehogs the whole world over. "Tell us the story of the first crossing, Mummy," little hedgehogs would plead at bedtime. And then they would listen enthralled to the tale of Max, the hedgehog who became a Hodgeheg, who became a hero. And always the mothers ended with this same phrase, and they all crossed happily ever after. So though Max had quite a few adventures in this story, he did actually manage to find a safe way to cross the road at the end. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to read that yourself, it's a 5.2 on the accelerated reader, and there's quite a lot of copies around school. I haven't explained to you why it's called the Hodgeheg yet. I don't want to spoil that. You can find that out for yourself if you read it. Okay, have a look at my lovely hedgehog ads that I've put on for you, and there's 3 of those, and they'll sing you nice little songs about road safety. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this assembly, and I hope you really enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'm sure I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.